Chip Kelly was all over headlines yesterday and our show, of course, and today. USA Today's Jarrett Bell took it a step further in his column, saying this: Chip Kelly has a big problem. It's called perception. When a third former member of Kelly's Philadelphia Eagles publicly calls out the coach and suspects that race or culture plays a role in how the team is run, it is more than a sour grapes coincidence. It's personal. So we've now heard publicly from Deshaun Jackson, LaShawn McCoy, and Brandon Boykin. With that being said, several current Eagles, including Mark Sanchez and Malcolm Jenkins, strongly endorse Kelly in his manner of operating. But Stephen A., is Kelly's image problem perception or a reality?
Well, it's both, because perception is reality in this modern day era. And if you have a bad perception, it's pretty hard to shake. Trust me, I know all about that. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is that Chip Kelly, however, has brought this upon himself simply because of some of the decisions that he has made, how it's been handled, and how it's contradictory to the kind of things he preaches. He wants to be all about football. He claims to be all about winning football games. But clearly it's not just about winning, because even after going 10-6 and going to the postseason, he let go of Deshaun Jackson. Even after following up by going 10-6, even though they missed the playoffs the following season, Jeremy Maclin and LaShawn McCoy ultimately were shown the door, whether it was literally or figuratively, not to mention Mathis and other guys on the team. That's not to say that they're just black players. And I think that really skews and fogs the argument, because we're not talking about things in terms of him not wanting black players on their squad, on his squad. Nobody is saying that. What you're talking about is when you have a particular way of doing things and you seem to be insensitive to how it could potentially affect other human beings, particularly of a different culture than yourself or something that you can relate to, then his response is to just get rid of it and let it go. And that's what these guys are alluding to, and that's what leads to their discomfort. I'll put it to you this way. I was on Mike and Mike this morning talking to Greeny and Golick, Skip, and one of the things that I brought up is that if something is perceived as anti-Semitic, you wouldn't dare say it. You wouldn't dare spew it. You wouldn't allow even that perception or that image to come across, because you're highly sensitive to that and the ramifications to follow. Well, when it comes to a lot of things pertaining to African Americans and whatever our issues may be, there's a heightened level of sensitivity that culturally we believe is sorely lacking on many occasions. And when it comes to Chip Kelly, that's something that obviously players believe. And I'm gonna end my point by saying this. I will remind everybody, there are an abundance of successful Super Bowl championship coaches who happen to be white. From the days of Hank Stram and Don Shula and Bud Grant, even though he went to 4 Super Bowls as a coach of the Minnesota Vikings and lost all 4 of them, to the days of Mike Ditka, to Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick, Sean Payton, the list goes on and on. White coaches, championship coaches, Tom Coughlin would be another one. Old school, die hard, do it my way or else. And you have never heard these things said about them. You've heard players lament how hardcore they could be, but you've never heard to this extent some of the things that are getting said by these black players about Chip Kelly. Now, you can sit there and ignore it, not meaning you, Skip, but the public can sit there and ignore it all they want to. And Golick, he can assume that winning will solve everything. It may solve a lot. It's not going to be that big of a story. I'm certainly not going to focus on it. I'm interested in talking about the games. But at the end of the day, what can't be ignored is that black players feel a certain way about how they believe Chip Kelly feels about them. Some have spoken up about it, others have not, but it is undeniable that they feel that way. Everybody can put their head in the sand if they want to, but it'll be to their peril, to their own peril.
Okay, Stephen A. Again, I compliment you on being out ahead of this story more than a year ago. But after we had such a good and deep discussion about it yesterday, and I appreciate that from me to you because I learned a lot yesterday, today I want to get to the bottom of this question we're asking. How much of this is perception and how much is reality? Because if there's some reality there, We need to call it the way you see it, as a black man, as a prominent voice in the black community. So now, as Molly points out, we've heard from Deshaun and LaShawn, Brandon Boykin. We also heard from Trey Thomas, an assistant coach on that staff the last 2 years, no longer an assistant coach, who you'll remember, Stephen A., back in March told Fox that he felt there was a hint of racism, quote unquote, hint of racism within that organization. So I keep hearing all of these players and this assistant coach describe what sounds like to me Chip Kelly's racist actions. Maybe it'd be more categorized as racist mindset. But everybody stopped short, including yourself, of calling Chip Kelly racist. So is he or isn't he a racist? That's what I want to get to, because you're describing him that way, but then you stop short and say, but I'm not saying he's a racist. Well,
but
is he or is he not?
I disagree, and I appreciate you asking that question, because it's incredibly fair and enlightening, the question in and of itself. So allow me to help you out here. Talk to folks within the black community, and Skip, we will tell you that you might have racial insensitivities, or you might have racial perceptions that we think are false or are off-putting or whatever. But it doesn't necessarily make you a racist. What you have is a situation where you have folks in white America who believe that if you disagree with them, or you tell them something is off-putting to you, or dare we say offensive to you, or dismissive in your eyes, oh, you're calling us racist. No, that's not true. There are plenty of, look, man, I've worked with people who are off-putting, who are dismissive, who might say things or come across as offensive. You have witnessed me point those things out to a person once or twice in my career. At no time did the thought ever enter my mind that they were racist. I never thought that, because I looked at them and I said, they may not know. They may not have any clue as to who I am, what I stand for, what I believe, how I might feel about things, etc., etc. And it's one of the things that black folks continuously allude to. And what you're having take place in today's culture, particularly as it pertains to professional athletes who are in the public eye and thereby the eye of the storm, is that everybody wants them to take a definitive, concrete position so we can say yay or nay to what you feel, as opposed to acknowledging that you have a right to sit there and say, well, I kind of noticed the difference between how you treated Riley Cooper and how you treated Deshaun Jackson. I kind of noticed the difference between how you treated a Riley Cooper and a LaShawn McCoy. I kind of noticed how you might talk even to a Boykin compared to a Malcolm Jenkins, who happens to be black as well, because he might be a particular kind of African American that you're comfortable with. Let me make you, Skip, or the growing public out here, a little bit more uncomfortable. If you recall, ESPN has repeatedly aired something 30 for 30, the Fab Five. And you saw in the Fab Five, Jalen Rose, Jimmy King, Juwan Howard and them allude to Duke and Grant Hill and how they perceive those guys. And Jalen Rose was excoriated. I personally thought it was unfair to him, because he was never saying he was right. What he was saying was, I was jealous of Duke, of a Grant Hill and guys like that, because the imagery and the perception that they had, coming from a beautiful home, beautiful parents, upper middle class upbringing, etc., etc., he was deemed more acceptable than me. And as a result, when he was young and ignorant, he resented Grant Hill for it. Whereas now that he's older, he understands that he's a bit more enlightened. It's the same principle, Skip. You have people who are deemed acceptable. And one of the things that some folks, not most, not all, but some folks in white America do, as we all do, to be quite honest with you, you might look at two people that are from the same environment, same culture, etc., etc., but they act totally differently. And you might deem one person more acceptable for you and easier for you to embrace than another. Well, that person that doesn't feel accepted is put off. He's offended. And he's like, what's wrong with me, particularly in the world of sports, when we're talking about a meritocracy where all that's supposed to matter is, do you follow the rules and regulations? Do you come and perform at an elite level? That's the bottom line. But what Chip Kelly has basically said in the eyes of some of these guys is acting right and performing at a high level is not enough. I need you to be the way I want you to be at all times. Otherwise, I'm not interested in you. Why would that not put off somebody who's different than Chip Kelly?
Okay, again, what you're describing to me, to my ears, is racist behavior. And I believe that you, and obviously Deshaun, LaShawn, Brandon, Trey Thomas, the message that is getting sent here to people of all colors, and I'm talking about viewers, readers, listeners, is that Chip Kelly is racist. Do you disagree that that's not the message being sent?
I think that's the message that's being inhaled and grasped that way because of what I just said. The fact that people want to interpret it that way, that's their damn problem. I know what I said. I think I got a decent command of the English language. And if I sit up there and I express to you what I just expressed to you, and you still want, or anybody else still wants to peel out that he's being called racist, that's your problem. If someone in the Jewish community came out and said, you know what, that's an anti-Semitic remark, I don't like that. But they didn't sit there and call the person anti-Semitic. They said the remark was, if you want to sit there and label somebody anti-Semitic, that's your problem. They just said it was an anti-Semitic remark. You've got behavior, as long as it's not a pattern or something religious or whatever, that might be different. But if you have a problem with how somebody treats you and you're honest enough to say, this is how I was affected, that doesn't mean you're calling the man a racist. It means you have an issue with him because he might be ignorant or insensitive, but it may not be racist.
Okay. Okay, got it. Question. Do you believe that Chip Kelly, as one of the 32 head coaches in the National Football League, has the right, within the confines of his own organization, to pick, quote unquote, his kind of black players, as well as his kind of white players or players of all colors to assemble his roster?
Yes, he does.
Okay. Is that offensive to you or not offensive to you?
It's not offensive to me, but if I don't like if I don't like what he selects or what he characterizes as acceptable, if I don't like his definition of acceptable, yes, he has a right to do it, but I have a right to highlight it and say I don't like it, and then leave the rest of the folks out there to draw their own conclusions. If I'm Malcolm Jenkins, even though it doesn't apply to him, if I'm a Boykin, if I'm a Deshaun Jackson, if I'm a LaShawn McCoy, anybody else, and I am uncomfortable with how you roll up on me because it deviates and it's a complete aberration from what I'm accustomed to, then we got an issue. Because think about this, Skip. From a public perception standpoint, we've raved about Bill Walsh, Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick, and all of these other, Jimmy Johnson, back in the day when you were covering the Cowboys, okay? Yeah. Jimmy Johnson, correct me if I'm wrong, Skip. You're the one that wrote 3 books on the Cowboys. Correct me if I'm wrong. Jimmy Johnson was like, I am consistent in the fact that I'm inconsistent. Those who produce at a high level will be treated differently than those who produce at a low level, okay? I'm about a meritocracy. Your personality. Bill Parcells was old school and hardcore, but there were concessions made for Lawrence Taylor, wasn't it? Because he was Lawrence Taylor. Whereas with a Chip Kelly, I'm not making any concessions for the Deshaun Jacksons of the world or people like that. But Riley Cooper, we'll find a way to keep him on our roster. That's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem. Because who are we talking about here? If Riley Cooper can end up on, if you can find a reason to keep Riley Cooper, but the Deshaun Jacksons and LaShawn McCoys of the world have got to go. I'm sorry. And you're fresh off of missing the playoffs? I'm sorry. What am I missing?
Yeah.
What's wrong with that picture? Riley Cooper ranked the worst wide receiver in the entire NFL by Pro Football Focus. That's unbelievable to me, Skip. That's unbelievable.
Okay. Ditto here, and I reiterate for about the 20th time on this show, I was the one who stood up the next day and said that man has to be cut from that football team the day after he was caught on cell phone video uttering, as I call it, the most evil word in this human language of ours, in the English language for sure. So, Stephen A., here's my 2 cents take on this situation from a white guy. I believe that Chip Kelly, as a football coach, has demonstrated some racial insensitivity. Bigger picture, my takeaway on this is that in Chip Kelly's part of this, that it's a little more about ego than it is about racism. That I believe that Chip Kelly wants to be known in the NFL as the quote-unquote smartest guy in the room. I think he wants total control. I think he sees total control of that franchise, and he wants to prove to everyone else out there that he could win his way with his guys. And as we keep pointing out, he's gone 10-6, 10-6. A lot of people think he might go 10-6 again this year. So it's hard to argue with his results so far. But as I told you yesterday, he wants coachable cogs. I don't know that he cares about what color the cog is, but he wants the guys who won't ask why, who won't rock his boat, who will do exactly what he says when it's time to do it. That's the Chip Kelly I see, and it's more about him wanting to be the star of his own show than about all the issues that the black players now departed from Philadelphia have brought up.
And my response to that as a closing comment would be this. That's fine, good and dandy. But other folks have a right to respond to it the way they deem fit. And if they find it uncomfortable, I'm not going to ignore that. And oh, by the way, I'm not knocking the producers of this show or anybody else, but I just saw the B-roll. Chip Kelly giving a high five to Deuce Staley. What are we trying to do? Send a subliminal message that he doesn't have problems with black players? We don't know that. So him giving a high five to somebody, hugging somebody, having a conversation with somebody or whatever does not gloss over the reality of what these players are saying. I don't know Chip Kelly. I'm not saying it about him. But I said it a year ago that what players were feeling, I have proven yet again to be right. And that is a reality that folks are going to have to deal with, including Mike Golick himself, who, by the way, I'm looking forward to showing up in studio and having this kind of discussion with him again. Because we spoke earlier this morning. I want to have that discussion face-to-face with Mike Golick because I always wanted to talk with him about Beast Mode, Marshawn Lynch too, which was another topic we never got together with. So my friend and colleague, Mike Golick, I'm waiting for my invitation to show up in studio with you and have this discussion because today's conversation was a tad bit too short. Nobody's hiding, bro. I can't wait for that conversation to take place. And that's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Stephen A., let me conclude this by saying I'm just trying to be fair to Chip Kelly here. If you tell me that you believe Chip Kelly is a racist or is displaying racist actions or mindset, I'm with you. I'm going to roll with you on that. I'm going to side with you and go with where you lead me on that. But we sort of get right to the edge of that, and then we stop. So I step back and say, well, is this all fair? Are we portraying Chip Kelly in the right light here?
It's fair, Skip, because players are saying it themselves on the record. It's not like they're quiet. They've said it on the record, and it's fair because of that, and it's fair because every single shot we get as the media, as the fourth estate, we don't hesitate to put players, young, relatively ignorant, and I don't mean that negatively. I'm just saying young, unwise, not filled with life experiences. We put them front and center every chance we get and hold them accountable. But you're a grown damn man, a leader of men, not just on a professional level, but it was on a collegiate level before you got to this level, and you're making these kind of errors, and we're supposed to ignore that because of fairness? Please. My boy Jeff said it best. You met him. Fair is a place where they judge pigs. It doesn't exist. And it hasn't existed for the players for decades. Why the hell should it exist for a coach? I don't want to hear that.